press reports the news of Mary White's death declared that it came from the result of a fall from a horse. How she would have hooted at that! She never fell from a horse in her life. Horses have fallen on her and with her. I'm always trying to hold him in my lap, she used to say. But she was proud of few things, and one was that she could ride anything with 4 legs and hair. Her death resulted not from a fall, but from a blow on the head which fractured her skull, and the blow came from the limb of an overhanging tree on the parking. But she did not fall from the horse, nor was she riding fast. A year or so ago she used to go like the wind, but that habit was broken, and she used the horse to get into the open, to get fresh, hard exercise, and to work off a certain surplus energy that welled up in her and needed a physical outlet. That need had been in her heart for years. It was back of the impulse that kept the dauntless little brown-clad figure on the streets and country roads of this community and built into a strong muscular body what had been a frail and sickly frame during the first years of her life. But the riding gave her more than a body. It released a gay and hearty soul. She was the happiest thing in the world. And she was happy because she was enlarging her vision. She was enlarging her horizon. She came to know all sorts and conditions of men. Charlie O'Brien, the traffic cop, was one of her best friends. W.L. Holtz, the Latin teacher, was another. Tom O'Connor, farmer politician, and Reverend J.H.J. Rice, preacher and police judge, and Frank Beach, music master, were her special friends. And all the girls, black and white, above the track and below the track, in Petville and Stringtown, were among her acquaintances. And she brought home riotous stories of her adventures. She loved to rollick. Persiflage was her natural expression at home. Her humor was a continual bubble of joy. She seemed to think in hyperbole and metaphor. She was mischievous without malice, as full of faults as an old shoe. No angel was Mary White, but an easy girl to live with, for she never nursed a grouse 5 minutes in her life. With all her eagerness for the out-of-doors, she loved books. On her table when she left her room were a book by Conrad, one by Galsworthy, Creative Chemistry by E.E. Slosson, and a Kipling book. She read Mark Twain, Dickens, and Kipling before she was 10, all of their writings. Wells and Arnold Bennett particularly amused and diverted her. She was entered as a student in Wellesley in 1922, was assistant editor of the high school annual this year, and in line for election to the editorship of the annual next year. She was a member of the executive committee of the high school YWCA. Within the last 2 years, she had begun to be moved by an ambition to draw. She began, as most children do, by scribbling in her school books funny pictures. She bought cartoon magazines and took a course, rather casually, naturally, for she was, after all, a child with no strong purpose. And this year she tasted the first fruits of success by having her pictures accepted by the high school annual. But the thrill of delight she got when Mr. Ecord of the normal annual asked her to do some cartooning for that book this spring was too beautiful for words. She fell to her work with all her enthusiastic heart. Her drawings were accepted, and her pride, always repressed by a lively sense of the ridiculousness of the figure she was cutting, was a really gorgeous thing to see. No successful artist ever drank a deeper draught of satisfaction than she took from the little fame her work was getting among her schoolfellows. In her glory, she almost forgot her horse, but not her car. For she life. She never had a party in all her life, nearly 17 years, wouldn't have one. But she never drove a block in the car in her life that she didn't begin to fill the car with pickups. Everybody rode with Mary White. White and black, old and young, rich and poor, men and women. She liked nothing better than to fill the car full of long-legged high school boys and an occasional girl and parade the town. She never had a date, nor went to a dance except once with her brother Bill, and the boy proposition didn't interest her yet. But young people, great spring-breaking, varnish-cracking, fender-bending, door-sagging carloads of kids gave her great pleasure. Her zests were keen. But the most fun she ever had in her life was acting as chairman of the committee that got up the big turkey dinner for the poorer folks at the country county home. Scores of pies, gallons of slaw, jam, cakes, preserves, oranges, and a wilderness of turkey were loaded into the car and taken to the county home. And being of a practical turn of mind, she risked her own Christmas dinner by staying to see that the poor folks actually got it all. Not that she was a cynic, she just disliked to tempt folks. While there, she found a blind, colored uncle, very old, who could do nothing but make rag rugs, and she rustled up from her high school friends enough to keep him busy for a whole season. The last engagement she tried to make was to take the guests at the county home out for a car ride, and the last endeavor of her life was to get a restroom for colored girls at the high school. She found one girl reading in the toilet because there was no better place for a colored girl to loaf, and it inflamed her sense of injustice, and she became a nagging harpy to those who she thought could remedy the evil. The poor she had always with her, and was glad of it. She hungered and thirsted for righteousness, and was the most impious creature in the world. She joined the Congregational Church without consulting her parents, not particularly for her soul's good. She never had a thrill of piety in her life and would have hooted at a testimony. But even as a little child, she felt the church was an agency for helping people to more of life's abundance, and she wanted to help. She never wanted help for herself. Clothes meant little to her. It was a fight to get a new rig on her, but eventually a harder fight to get it off. She never wore a jewel and had no ring but her high school class ring, and never asked for anything but a wristwatch. She refused to have her hair up, though she was nearly 17. "Mother," she protested, "you don't know how much I get by with in my braided pigtails that I could not with my hair up." Above every other passion of her life was her passion not to grow up, to be a child. The tomboy in her, which was big, seemed loath to be put away forever in skirts. She was a Peter Pan who refused to grow up. On the day of her funeral, a rift in the clouds in a gray day threw a shaft of sunlight upon her coffin as her nervous, energetic little body sank to its last sleep. But the soul of her, the glowing, gorgeous, fervent soul of her, surely was flaming in eager joy upon some other dawn.